passing through Waitara Junction with the remains of its island platform that once saw mixed trains depart here for Dargaville. Just one of a handful of DCs still being used on local shunts around Auckland. The ballast cleaner conveyor train passing through Huntly. trundling along the Waitoa branch that once connected the Bay of Plenty before the Kaimai Tunnel was completed. Imported containers of goods landed at the port of Tauranga, destined for New Zealand markets. The Mananui Yard once saw hopper wagons arrive for the local Ravensdown fertiliser bulk store in the background, finished timber from Allison Bonan's mill, petroleum products and stockpiling ballast for the railway. Today, the only outward traffic from this once busy yard is the occasional loaded ballast wagons. In the background, the old Hapua Whenua viaduct that is now part of the old coach road walking and mountain biking track that runs between Owakuni and Horapito. In the foreground, the remnants of Ingahapi Road that is now part of a walkway to the viaduct through private farmland. KiwiRail mothballed the Napier to Wairau line in 2012, but it reopened in January 2020 after a $6.2 million investment in order to move logs and relieve the pressure of logging trucks using State Highway 2. At present, there is one return service 5 days a week. Train 736, crossing the Awatiri River Bridge that once carried road traffic on the single-lane lower deck. Transalpine, heading into the winter wonderland of the scenic Midland Line. Arriving at Otira with 2 additional locomotives added to the train at Arthur's Pass for the run through the Otira Tunnel. Plus 2 rescue locomotives attached at the rear. The train getting underway once the additional locomotives have been uncoupled. New Zealand's high-powered DXCs operate in one of the country's most demanding environments, the Otira Banker operation. In 8.5 kilometres, the track rises 250 metres in elevation from the Otira end of the tunnel to exiting at the Arthur's Pass end. During the peak of the dairy season, the Hokitika line is busy with export containers of milk powder and the 3 empty milk tanks returning to Rolleston for refilling. The Alliance Meatworks shunting loco DSC 2462 is leased from KiwiRail and still wears its faded toll rail livery. Freight trains heading north out of Dunedin face a steep climb from Sawyers Bay to Mihiwaka Tunnel. Standard railcar RM31 Tokomaru is one of 5 constructed by New Zealand Railways Hut Workshops from 1938. The standards were retired and withdrawn from service in December 1972. They had provided a daily rail passenger service in both directions between Wellington and New Plymouth. Waverley was one station on the Taranaki line that they once served. This scene, filmed in November 1960, features RM31 crossing WW561 on an excursion at Pārtea. Today Pārtea is a shadow of its former self and survives as a crossing loop for freight services. The railway once served the cool stores beside the river in the distance and the large Pārtea freezing works that closed in September 1982. In service, the standards had a top speed of 105 km per hour.
Couple of lights for you?
Departing New Plymouth on a side trip to Lepperton, the driver changing gears as the railcar gathers speed. A pair of standards were set up to run in multiple operation. We have digitally transferred Cran Julian's 16mm colour film that features the last days of the twin-set articulated railcars. Cran followed the Hawke's Bay railcar services in May 1976. 35 of these railcars were delivered between 1955 and 1958 from the Drury Car Company in Great Britain. They were built by the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Company and each were fitted with two underfloor Fiat horizontal 6-cylinder diesel engines. They operated on many provincial services, taking over from the steam-hauled expresses. Their design top speed was 105 km per hour. The Gisborne to Wellington railcar service was discontinued from the 31st of May 1976. In November 1972, the Endeavour Passenger Express replaced one of the Wellington to Napier railcar services. Graham was on hand to capture the final Blue Streak service between New Plymouth and Wellington on Friday, the 30th of July 1977. With the introduction of the new Silverfern railcars on the North Island main trunk in December 1972, the three Blue Streak railcars were transferred to operate the Wellington to New Plymouth services on the Taranaki line. They were timetabled to depart New Plymouth at 9 a.m. and arrive in Wellington at 3:33 p.m. and the fare in 1973 was $6. The Wellington service departed at 9:50 a.m. and arrived in New Plymouth at 4:30 p.m. There were 13 station stops along the route, with light refreshments being served on board by hostesses. Both services stopped for lunch at Palmerston North for 20 minutes, the northbound railcar at 11:52 and the southbound service at 1:14. When it was announced that there were no longer to be a rail passenger service, there was a public outcry. New Zealand Railways looked at providing a daily passenger train between Palmerston North and New Plymouth, manned by a Palmerston North crew. This service would connect at Palmerston North with the Endeavour Express to and from Napier. However, the Wellington branch of the National Union of Railwaymen got involved and believed that the train should be operated by a Wellington crew, as had been with the Blue Streak service. Unfortunately, this couldn't be resolved, and intercity buses replaced the Blue Streak, denying the people of Wanganui and Taranaki a rail passenger service beyond July 1977. 50 years ago in 1972, Steam Incorporated was formed with the intention of operating heritage excursions on the National Rail network. Paikokariki became their base on the site of the original locomotive depot. Their dream to operate on the main line came in 1985. Steam Incorporated frequently travels around New Zealand offering the public excursions to many destinations. This is the Double Thunder excursion from Glenbrook to Hamilton, where JA 1271 teamed up with the Glenbrook Vintage Railway's JA 1250. The two hillside-built JAs only saw service in the South Island during their relatively short careers with New Zealand Railways. A handful of the class lasted until steam operations came to an end in the South Island in October 1971. To celebrate their 50th anniversary in 2022, Steam Incorporated ran a trip from Wellington to Woodville with their two mainline certified locomotives JA 1271 and AB 608. Steam Incorporated also operate a pair of DA-class diesel electrics. In total, 141 DAs became the standard locomotive in the North Island, with the final batch arriving towards the close of 1967. DA 1410, built by General Motors in Canada, entered service in 1955. And DA 1431, built by General Motors Clyde Engineering Australia, entered service in 1957. With the Gisborne to KiwiRail line closed due to major washouts, Jeff Main from Gisborne Rail Bike Adventures has secured a lease on 2 sections of the undamaged line to operate a unique rail bike experience. We feature the half-day guided beach loop section. The tandem cycles allow you to ride side by side with no balancing or steering required, leaving your hands free to take photos and video. The longest ride is the Muriwai to Beach Loop section that totals 32 kilometres for the return journey. There is a choice of e-bikes or normal bikes. They are all single geared and come with 2 headlights, a small parcel tray mounted on the front to hold snacks and cameras, plus 2 waterproof backpacks on the rear frame. Riders are required to space themselves at least 10 metres between each other. The railhead provides riders with a very smooth ride. The beach loop ride starts at the southern end of Muriwai Station Yard and travels on a slight upgrade until you reach Maraitaha, where the grade steepens on the 6-kilometre climb to the 1,400 metre long Waikura Tunnel. All of the tunnel floors on this line had been lowered by 2010 to allow for the passage of high cube containers. After exiting the second shorter tunnel, you reach Beach Loop and the damage caused in March 2012 by one of the 3 washouts that closed the line. The south end points hanging in the air, and as they were 4 months before the washout, when mainline steam ran an excursion from Gisborne with KA 942. After turning the bikes around, we travelled downgrade to tunnel number 25 with Jeff leading. Back in November 2011, Steam Incorporated staged a photo run-by at this site with DA 1431. Gisborne Rail Bike Adventures also operate the Mahia Coastal Ride that starts at Opatama, passes the fishing settlement of Waikokapū, the spectacular coastline above Black's Beach, and the turnaround point at New Haka. This 22-kilometre return journey takes in magnificent views of the Pacific Ocean and Mahia Peninsula, crossing State Highway 2 at Bartlett's, and arriving back at Muriwai. JA 1250 and Mainline Steam's JA 1240 double head over the Glenbrook Vintage Railways line. 35 JAs were constructed at Dunedin's Hillside Railway Workshops between 1947 and 1956 for South Island service. Since it was introduced in December 1971, the Kingston Flyer has had many changes of ownership, but in 2017, a group of private investors has seen it restored and in 2021 commenced special charter runs between Kingston and Fairlight. With a wet track and rusty rail, 795 crawls its way up the grade out of Kingston, with Miles Manahera coaxing the loco inch by inch. AB 795 in its train still attracts plenty of attention when it makes an appearance. Running around the turning triangle at Fairlight. In the background is the suspension bridge that now forms part of the Around the Mountain cycle trail that follows the original formation of the Kingston line to Lumsden. The latest restoration of the Kingston Flyer was made possible by the hard work and dedication of an experienced voluntary team of rail enthusiasts led by Neville Simpson. On an excursion to Owakuni, DBR 1254 was used to reposition a number of SX class carriages stored in the Taumaranui yard that had become available for sale. These carriages were last used on the Auckland suburban network until the electric multiple units took over all the commuter services in 2015. .1254 then moved a set of SA carriages clear of the road to the goods shed. The Taumaranui Rail Action Centre Trust purchased one of the SX carriages that it plans to restore and display for the public. To place it in the goods shed, the 1937 Cowan Sheldon 10-tonne lift steam crane 226 and support wagon were moved out. The GVR's General Manager Tim Kerwin placing the carriage in the shed that was followed by the steam crane. The remaining 5 SX carriages were then placed in a convenient position to enable heavy lift cranes to place them onto transporters for the road journey to their new owners in Wanganui, Hastings and Taupo. The Whangaparaoa narrow gauge railway north of Auckland has closed. New Zealand rail scene first paid a visit to the railway in 1995, 3 years after it had opened for business. The miniature 15-inch gauge railway was the dream of Ted Poynton, who started laying track in March 1958. It winds through a large stand of native bush and includes 2 bridges, a tunnel and a curved timber viaduct. Little Toot Number 1 now sits in Rotten Row. Unfortunately, under today's health and safety legislation, the bridges and viaduct need to include a walking platform and handrails to allow passengers an escape path should a train become immobilised on them.
Good boy.
Over the past 25 years, the Whangaparoa Miniature Railway has carried thousands of passengers and has been an excellent venue to hold children's birthday parties.